Guam was our base in the Marianas, from which the B-29s took off for their nightly incendiary raids on Japan. As an Air Force colonel, I'd flown those missions, 7 endless hours over the Pacific to the coastline, the wink of ack-ack guns and the flak bursts all around us, the searchlights that lit up our cabins, and, after our bomb run, the red ruin of an enemy city burning. We would throttle down to the cruising speed for the 1,500 miles of empty ocean between us and home. This particular night, I sat in the headquarters tent with Colonel Carl Story, waiting for the mission's strike report. Group Commander Story, a lean, tough Texan, paced up and down the tent, restless as a caged animal, as the news filtered in. The lead plane, commanded by Captain Tony Simmerl, had been forced to turn away from the target, had made an emergency landing at Iwo Jima, and was on its way back. We heard the drone of its engines, saw the red distress flares and the fire trucks rumbling out to meet it as it touched down. A few moments later, Captain Simmerall entered the tent. His face was white. He seemed to be in a state of shock. I saw that the back of his right hand was pockmarked with deep, ugly holes that had burned clear to the bone. He told us it happened as they approached the enemy coast. They were flying the Pathfinder plane, which drops a phosphorus smoke bomb to assemble the formation before proceeding to the target. The radio operator, Sergeant Henry Erwin, was a chunky redhead from Alabama. From the waist of the plane, he released the bomb and the captain's signal through a narrow tube. There was a malfunction. The bomb exploded in the tube and bounced back into Erwin's face, blinding both eyes and searing off an ear. Phosphorus burns with a furious intensity that melts metal like butter. Now the bomb at Erwin's feet was eating its way rapidly through the deck of the plane toward the full load of incendiaries in their racks below. All alone, the navigator had gone up to the Astrodome, and there was no time to think. He picked up the white-hot bomb in his bare hands and started forward to the cockpit, groping his way with elbows and feet. The navigator's table blocked the narrow passageway. Erwin hugged the blazing bomb under an arm, feeling it devour the flesh on his ribs, and unfastened the latch to lift the table. We inspected the plane later. The skin of his entire hand was seared onto that navigator's table. He stumbled on, his hair and flesh ablaze. Dense smoke had filled the airplane, and Simmerl had opened the window beside him to clear the air. I couldn't see Erwin, he told us, but I heard his voice right at my elbow. He said, he paused to steady his voice. He said, "Pardon me, sir," and reached across the window and tossed out the bomb. And he collapsed on the flight deck. A fire extinguisher was turned on him, but the phosphorus still burned. Simmerall's instrument panel was obliterated by the smoke, and the plane was out of control. Less than 300 feet from the water, he righted it and called to the formation that he was aborting. He jettisoned his bombs and headed back to the field hospital at Iwo, 3 hours away. The crew gave all the first aid they could to Erwin. Plasma, smearing grease on his smoldering flesh. He never lost consciousness. He spoke only once the whole way back. He asked me, "Is everybody else all right, sir?" At Iwo, he was still exhaling phosphorus smoke from his lungs. His body had become so rigid that he had to be eased through the window like a log. In the hospital, the minute they exposed his flesh to the air, it began to smolder again. The airplane flew on to Guam with 11 men who would not be alive, save for the one they had left behind. Simmerall finished talking, was taken to the hospital to have his burns treated. We spent the rest of the night writing up a recommendation for the Congressional Medal of Honor. There was no need to speak of heroism and sacrifice. The facts were enough. It ended with the conventional military phrase, above and beyond the call of duty, which seemed to express it pretty well. At 5 in the morning, Colonel Story carried the single typewritten page to Air Force headquarters. General Curtis LeMay was awakened. He read and signed it, and the recommendation was flashed to Washington. The reply arrived in record time. Approved. Ewell reported that Sergeant Erwin was still alive, but no one could say how much longer he might survive. There was no Congressional Medal of Honor on Guam. The nearest was in Honolulu, and a special B-29 was dispatched to fly the Pacific to Hawaii. The medal was locked in a display case in General Robert C. Richardson's headquarters, and the key was missing. They smashed the glass, took the medal from the case, and sped back to Guam. General LeMay flew to Iwo and personally presented the medal to Sergeant Erwin in a ceremony at his hospital bedside. As he repeated the final line about the call of duty, Erwin said, "Thank you, sir." Several years after the war, I heard that Erwin was back in Alabama, happily married. He had regained the use of his hands and had partial vision in one eye. I hope he can read over his citation now and then. I hope it gives him as much satisfaction as it gave me to write it.